Hi everyone, it's Dr. Ramani. Welcome back to this YouTube channel on narcissism, narcissistic relationships, and healing from narcissistic relationships. Today we're going to take on endurance, and who knew endurance was not necessarily always a good thing. So anyone who's ever survived a long-term narcissistic relationship knows more about endurance than any extreme athlete. Because the fact is, narcissistic relationships in some ways are like one of those 100-mile marathons. The people in them get sick. They kind of sometimes even hallucinate and lose their grip with reality. Their bodies kind of get destroyed. But there's a sort of toughness they experience, right? Because if you ran 100 miles, you endured it. It's tough, right? Endurance, though, is the name of the game in a narcissistic relationship. And this is not, narcissistic relationships aren't about being sprinters. This is about being able to, in the long term, endure the confusion, inconsistency, gaslighting, manipulation, selfishness, entitlement, and invalidation of a relationship that more days than not leaves you feeling worse about yourself. After a while, you are so focused on getting through the day that it is easy to lose sight of how damaging this relationship is. But people who are in narcissistic relationships grow accustomed to putting their heads down, losing themselves, and almost proving something to themselves by getting through another day. It just becomes an act of sheer will, like probably running that 86th mile in that 100-mile race. So here is where this endurance dynamic gets to be kind of gross. When you get praised for enduring, either by the narcissistic person themselves or by another person, what may happen is that you are told that you're doing great because you put up with their BS, or because you don't let them get under your skin, or you're even rewarded. Oh gosh, you're so easy. You're able to make all these relationships work. You're being congratulated for giving up on yourself and not questioning the toxicity of this relationship to other people. You may be, but not outside. Sadly, we often offer up high praise to people who quietly put up with narcissistic or other kinds of toxic relationships. Oh, she's a saint, isn't she? Isn't he cool? He just goes with the flow. They don't let stuff get to them. Aren't they just wonderful? Maybe, but maybe not. They may be wonderful, I'm sure they are. But offering up praise for enduring toxic relationship behavior sets a really bad precedent and can often leave that person feeling unseen. And survivors of narcissistic abuse experience this all the time. It's basically the grown-up equivalent of saying, isn't she just such a good girl? Because she's sitting there so quiet and well-behaved and not asking for any of her needs to be met. But what the child is often doing is morphing into what the parents demand of her. Who knows how that good girl is, because nobody's finding out. She's not expressing anything she needs anyhow. In the same manner, we reward adults who do this in their relationships. This sort of rewarded endurance is something I have a real problem with. I have said to many clients over the years, oh my goodness, you've endured so much, meaning that you've been through so much. But for me, it's not okay to say, well, look at how well you're enduring this. There is no well with regard to having to navigate narcissistic behavior on the daily. I know that for many people, the big question is, how do I stay in one of these relationships? I can't leave. I'm not ready to leave. I'm afraid to leave. So how do I stay? Yeah, many people stay, and you need to figure out workarounds. But a silent, soul-killing endurance in the long term isn't going to work. Because to do that means that you still aren't allowing yourself to exist in terms of your identity and your sense of self separate from them. And the fact is, they don't want you to do that. Staying is about thousands of things you do. Foster other social ties, perhaps being in therapy, finding support, finding your voice, doing things that give you meaning and purpose, and disengaging from the narcissistic person as much as you can. But it's not about capitulating and surrender and enduring the suffering stoically. The narcissistic people and their enablers, and frankly society at large, may want to give you applause for being a quiet and patient sufferer and endurer. But please know that healing means giving yourself permission to find 1,000 small ways to rebel in these relationships every day. For my lazy self, running a 100-mile race really doesn't make sense. And enduring a toxic relationship doesn't either. So keep that in mind, that think of all of us as kids, especially for girls and women. What a good girl you are. You sat there, you asked for nothing, and we praise that. And we do it for adults. There are no prizes for endurance. Thanks again.